This is my current desk, and it's where I do the majority of my work.
Nice.
But today, this is going to be my workstation. This is a really small space to work in, as it's only 35 inches. And getting set up was a challenge all on its own. I had to make sure that everything was in the right spot, since I'd be planting myself here for the next 5 hours. This is ridiculous. Since I got everything set up, it was now time to work. As with every project, I smited the default cube back into the darkness from whence it came. I actually used that one before, I think. I just love Lord of the Rings, if you couldn't tell. My goal is to make a PT-inspired game, where the player will walk in an infinite loop and get a few spooks here and there. For the hallway, I just needed to add a plane. Then I started extruding out the length of the hallway. I then added 2 loop cuts for a doorway, and extruded the edges of the room to make walls. Then doing one more extrusion, I capped the room. I then did the same process for the whole hallway. Now it's time to make some doors to prevent prying eyes. This was pretty easy, just adding a couple cubes for the door and door frame. So that is a nice and very simple doorway. Now that I had the interior of the building modeled, I needed to add some textures. For the textures, I decided to go with the Tiny Texture Pack 2. I'll also have a link to this page down below. Now I just had to texture the whole map. This took me about 45 minutes to an hour to finish, just going through adding textures to the wall and floor. After I got the base textures done, I went to work on the player controller. For the player, I added a cube and then started scaling it up to be about the size of the door. Then I made it thicker. Finally, I set the hitbox to wired mode. This makes it invisible. Time for the fun part, making the player actually walk around. This is pretty easy. I just added my keyboard controls. Using some math and vectors, I'm able to move the character around. It's just that easy. I also need to make it so the player can look around. Luckily, there is a simple look node that does this part for me. Now that I can walk around, I started to notice that this is a very empty building. So I went to work on building some simple furnishings to fill out this little building. With more or less of the assets completed for now, I needed to start on the main part of the game, the infinite loop. I think one of the things that I want to do first is make it so the loop actually works. To start, I would need to extend the hallway in order to make a buffer zone where the player could get set back to the start. Then I made a new script and then applied it to my player. The basic idea being when the player collides with the volume in the buffer zone, a timer will start, and when it elapses, the player will be sent back to the start. I also reset the player's rotation to make sure it's less jarring when the player is transported. Next, I wanted to make an animation for the player entering the hallway again. This also acts as a transition to smoothly go between the loops. It's not fancy, but it works. Right now, the transition between areas is still bad looking. I added a fade effect by lowering the brightness of the scene. This works well for the end of the hallway, but I had some issues doing the opposite fade. To fix the player spawn, I animated the door to open as the player goes through it. This actually makes a pretty nice transition effect. But by this point, I was losing my sanity sitting on this toilet. It has been 3, almost 4 hours now since I started making this video in my bathroom. It's fine, we're gonna make it happen. Well, I will say that is PT on the toilet. Oh my goodness. That makes me excited. And at this point, it was time to upload my project to itch. I made a quick display image in Photoshop, and then I went through the entire upload process. As of now, PT on the Toilet is available on itch, and I'll leave a link in the description so you can check it out. I will be doing some updates on PT on the Toilet, so think about following. This was an incredible journey, but at this point, I'm glad it's finished. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye! Oh, that's perfect. I like it. Let's do that.